Blog Talk Radio.
Carol the Coach. Sex, love, and relationships. We talk about it here.
Carol the Coach. Compassion with contemporary relevance.
I am a psychotherapist. I can be your personal life coach, and I can help you with your issues. There are no problems too small or too big. You can talk about anything.
Speaker, columnist, radio TV host, and commentator. Carol the Coach brings messages of wellness and empowerment within reach of everyday people every day.
Almost 5 years ago, I lost my soulmate in an accident. He was killed in a plane crash. Life just, for me, has seemed to stop.
There are groups all over the city. I teach one. It is a specific way to start thinking so that you shift how you see the world, which then shifts your energy, and then you feel better and you actually see things differently.
Carol the Coach. Always available, too, at carolthecoach.com.
Now, I've got Russell on the line.
I'm 47 years old. I'm a truck driver. I'm married. I have a wife in San Francisco.
Okay.
I haven't been home in 6 months. My thing is, I don't know if I have a sex addiction or what the problem is. Why do I want what I can't have? And as soon as I can have it, I don't want it anymore.
You're right on target when you say, I don't know if I have a sexual addiction. Well, guess what? Yes, you do. And you know what? That's my specialty, Russell, so you're at the right place. Continue.
I meet women online, and I'm in a different part of the country. I travel all 48 states, so I love sex.
I hear self-esteem issues. You never felt good enough, and you didn't feel like you were getting what you should have then, and you're reenacting that now. Do you want to change that about yourself?
You get what you need.
Well, do you want to change? Obviously, in January, that's the question that most people ask themselves. However, if you are a sex addict, you know that you're always undergoing change. That is what you're striving for. And if you're somebody who's listening to the show for the first, second, or third time, you may still be wondering, do you really have a problem? And, you know, I'm the one that is here to tell you that if you're questioning that, you need to go to www.sexhelp.com, take the test, read the literature, and start doing some heavy-duty work on yourself. 1, you need to meet with a certified sexual addictions therapist. 2, start doing some bibliotherapy. I know you may be one of those people that really don't want to read, but I'm telling you, if you have some questions, then you really need to go to my website, www.sexhelpwithcarolthecoach, and see what I recommend for reading materials, because I recommend only the best. And it can get very confusing what books to read, what's important, what do you do. And I always say that it's super essential to get support. And how do you do that? Well, the easiest way to do that is to contact somebody who's knowledgeable, attend some SAA or SA groups, and take a look at what's out there to assist you in getting healthy. You know, I have worked with thousands of people with sexual addiction. And I got to tell you, they take a whole regimen of treatment. There's not one size that fits all. I mean, clearly, if you can get to a certified sexual addictions therapist, that's the way to get the immediate resource available and be redirected or directed to the additional resources. Sometimes when I've worked with somebody or I've done an assessment and I realize that they are just banging their head up against the wall, they're doing the same thing over and over again, they're hoping that eventually it'll be different, and it isn't. Well, when that occurs, then what I do is I refer them to a treatment center, or I refer them to intensive treatment. That may be a 2, 3, 4, 5, 7-day program to jumpstart their success. And tonight, I am going to be talking with an expert in the field. This man, Dr. Ken Adams, is gurus in terms of treatment. You know, he has spent several decades working with sexual addiction and partners of sex addicts. And so one of the things that he found that was incredibly helpful was to create intensive workshops. This actually educated a client and or a partner of a sex addict and helped them to get the fundamentals first and foremost. And people that took these intensives found that they learned so much so quickly. You know, instead of going to therapy for a year or two, they learned in 4, 5, 7 days enough information to access all the supports around them. And tonight, Dr. Adams is going to be talking about 2 intensive workshops that he has set up for this year. One he is specifically running, and it's called the New Intensive Workshop for Mother Enmeshed Men. Now, for some of you, you may not even know what that word enmeshed means. But what Dr. Adams has found is that clients have particular difficulty in breaking free from unhealthy behaviors and having healthy relationships if they have had an overly enmeshed relationship with their mother. And enmeshed means overly close, lack of boundaries, where there's a lot of underlying anger or guilt. And these men are not so much, it's not like they wanted that relationship with their mother. Usually they are a casualty of a mother who wants too much closeness with them, uses them as surrogate husbands, uses them as surrogate companions. And so this has come across so oftentimes in work with sex addicts as well as other men that have had trauma that he created this workshop to help participants through experiential work and artwork and small and large group experiences to identify the trappings of this kind of relationship and understand how that actually, by default, creates an erotic template that is very difficult to change without the help of these intensive workshops or without the help of skilled therapists who understand how tough it can be when you're in a family without boundaries, specifically between mother and son. He's written books on the subject. He is a national speaker across the country, and this workshop is just instrumental in changing a relationship that is very difficult to change. He also has directed and created a workshop for spouses and partners of sex addicts. And he has an intensive outpatient workshop that is being led right now by Judith Trenkamp and Hope Ray. And they have studied directly under him and have the same kind of spirit of compassion and attention to detail that Dr. Adams has had in all of his programming as he created the Life Healing Center in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And so if you're a partner of a sex addict and you have trouble with boundaries, you have trouble saying no, you have trouble putting yourself on the front burner and creating self-care. You know, if you don't feel empowered, as a matter of fact, you feel identityless, and you're having difficulty figuring out what your feelings are and how to develop your own individuation, you're so consumed by the sex addict that it's really hard to know what you need, well, then you really need to look into this amazing workshop that's going to be from March 13th to the 16th. And again, you can email Dr. Ken Adams and Associates at gmail.com or contact 248-398-0740 to get more information on that. And You can always email me at carolthecoach@aol.com, and I will also send you the information. I love workshops because they're not nearly as expensive as treatment, and yet they really do a great job of, as I said, getting you jump-started into what you need to do. And then oftentimes there's a lot of support that occurs after the workshop. His enmeshment workshop with mothers, as I called it before, the Mother Enmeshed Men workshop, is going to be March 20th through the 23rd. And the workshop that has to do with sexual partners of sex addicts will be March 13th through the 16th. So we're going to be talking to him and finding out more about these intensives and, why you use them and what's wrong with being close to mom and what's the impact on a spouse or partner when you've got this kind of relationship with your mother, and how do you break the chains of codependency that occurs, as well as talking about the sex addict, the Partners of Sex Addicts workshop. What can you do to get healthy, and why is this intensive important? Now, I hope that you're all having a successful new year. We're already into the 6th of January, and I'm a big advocate about not resolutions, but looking at behavioral change. A Carol the Coachism that I have is, don't create a goal that you really want to work towards. Instead, find a word that depicts a change you'd like to see in yourself. Maybe it's a self-care word such as fitness, or a relationship word such as communication or closeness or intimacy. Perhaps you want to work on something very specific. So find a word that reflects what that is, and then figure out how you can symbolize and identify ways of experimenting with that word throughout the year. My word this year is service. And if anybody is in a 12-step program, they know that the 12th step is about, how can I serve others? How can I serve my community? What can I do to serve? Because when we serve, we do many things, but certainly it takes the focus off of us, and it creates a healing for others that ends up coming back and making us feel good too. And so service is going to be my word for the year. One year it was inspiration, another year it was boundaries, another year it was self-care. I am now the queen of self-care, so I don't need to work on that. I do a really good job of that. I work hard, but I play hard. So I would love to know what your word is. I'd love for you to email me and let me know what that word is. I cannot say enough about how a word can change your life when you write it on Post-it notes and you put it in your phone and you look for fun ways to demonstrate that word. And as opposed to feeling deprived or having that sense of deprivation, you get excited about what that word has to bring. And certainly in the recovery field, there's a lot of words that make a difference, gratitude being one of them. I do not fall asleep at night without thinking of 3 things I'm grateful for. And when I'm grateful, I'm happier. And when I'm happier, I feel better about myself, and I exude something that the world needs. The world needs for us to be positive, but we can only do that after we heal our own wounds, and that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. Healing the wounds of dysfunctional relationships, whether it's in our partnerships or whether it's in our core relationships with our family of origin. And when you learn how not to be a victim to that, then you free yourself to be the person that you really want to be, and you can create the life you deserve, and that's what counts. So I would encourage you to think about your word for the year and to email me at carolthecoach@aol.com. So now, as I indicated before, I'm so excited because Dr. Ken Adams has a wealth of knowledge in the field of sexual addiction. So Welcome to the show, Dr. Adams. How are you tonight?
Well, I'm fine. A little cold up here in Michigan, but otherwise good. How are you?
What's the temperature?
It's -8 and wind chill about 40 below.
Oh, yeah,
so,
we are the same here in Indianapolis.
Oh, all right. Well, we can sympathize together. But I'm excited to be on your show again, and I'm looking forward to having a chance to talk with you and your audience.
Well, absolutely. And obviously, these are two intensives that you created and saw such a need in amongst a lot of different people, but especially amongst people that suffer from sexual addiction or who love somebody who suffers from sexual addiction. So tell me, what is the focus of your intensive workshops? Why did you create them?
Well, I think there's a need for short-term intensives, and there's a number of those programs throughout the country, and I wanted to add our expertise and knowledge base to them. They help people identify problems in a more efficient way and help people get unstuck in the course of their normal recovery and treatment process. So we created two. We have other ones coming. We created one for partners of sex addicts, spouses and partners of sex addicts, and we created another one specifically for men who have had enmeshed or covertly incestuous relationship with their mothers. In other words, where there has been a too close relationship with mom. We find that to be a dynamic among addicts, particularly sex addicts. Not every addict has that, but we do find that to be an issue. So we wanted to address that. It's been the topic of a couple of my publications, a couple of my books. And so I wanted to take what I knew and create an intensive for those men. And we have a few others coming out towards the end of 2014. So these two are coming in March. We hold them at a beautiful retreat center called Columbia Air. So the folks come, and they come on a Thursday night and they leave on a Sunday, and the meals and the lodging is all provided. And it's an intensive process from beginning to end. It's a therapeutic process designed to help people get unstuck and identify the issues and kind of move them along. So we're very excited about that, and we're almost full on one of them. We have some slots left on both, but one is almost full at this point, and those are happening in March.
Okay, and so who would be most likely to need both of these kinds of workshops? Well,
let's talk first about the spouses and partners workshop. So if someone's been involved with a person who has been sexually compulsive or addictive, depending on what word you like, those spouses and partners of sex addicts, as it's known, are traumatized by a number of issues related to that: the betrayal of trust, the blaming, the gaslighting, which is referring to telling people that they're crazy. How could you think that about me? They suffer from what I've heard called almost an existential mistrust. In other words, they've come to mistrust the world at large. So there's a tremendous amount of trauma that occurs when somebody is involved with an addict who has repetitive betrayals of trust, violations. There's abuse in terms of sometimes physical and sexual abuse, being ridiculed for not being attractive enough, and so forth. So we created a workshop specifically for partners and spouses of sex addicts. In this case, this is a workshop for women. It's not co-ed at this point. We will create one for co-ed, but this one's for women. And it's designed to help. You can only do so much in 4 days, but we were really specific. We wanted them to help them to feel validated. We want them to help them to reclaim their own reality, their own feelings, and to have a sense that they can manage and get through this and come to trust themselves. That may or may not mean that they can trust their addict partner again, but we help them in that process to come to trust themselves. So that was the goal of our intensives for the partners, and we're very excited to offer that. And I feel like it's a very gentle experience, but steady in terms of helping people stay with it. So it's really designed for the majority of partners who have had some trauma, who feel stuck, who need a boost, and who feel that they could benefit from an intensive experience. We have folks who are prepared to do a phone interview to make sure that the fit is right, so we screen people. If we feel like it's not a good fit for them, we tell them up front. We don't take everybody who comes in because we want to make sure that they have a good experience. So I would say anybody who...
Great.
Yeah, I think that says it all.
So let
me
ask you something. Obviously, sex addicts, their partners are in a lot of pain, no matter where they are in their recovery. You use that word trust. They have trouble trusting their partner. They actually have trouble trusting themselves. And so if they are wondering, is this the kind of right program for me, that phone interview is an assessment that will actually help them to decide, would this be worth my while? Am I ready for this now? Am I ready to get unstuck?
Exactly. We want to let people know that we purposely we know we can't create a process that tackles every single person that falls under the umbrella of a partner with sex addicts. So we're very careful about bringing people into the process that we think is a good fit, because we want it to work for them. And we want the process to work for the group as a whole. So, yes, the screening, they can contact my office, and we will do a phone screening with them. We will talk to their therapist. We prefer that they be in therapy with somebody. So we have people coming from all across the country for these workshops, as well as local people. The therapists actually stay on campus for the partner one. So we're very careful about how we match the person with the process, which I think is what makes a process work, frankly, like this intensives that we're creating.
Okay, and the therapists that are running these intensives are?
Dr. Judy Trenkamp, Hope Ray are the women who are the therapists who are running the Partners workshop. They are both CSAT, Certified Sexual Addiction therapists, and they have also been trained in the new certification for dealing with partners of sex addicts. So these two women really know what they're doing. They have a wide knowledge base. They have good hearts. They're very skilled therapists, and I feel very fortunate to have them work for me. And the program for men, the Mother Enmeshed Men Workshop, that actually is run by myself and one or two of my associates, depending on how big we get, and those are male therapists for that one.
Well, I was going to ask you, how big do you want these intensives to be? How many people typically are a part of this weekend?
Well, we keep so there's two parts to the process. There is a large sort of educational kind of class didactic period where the larger group comes together, and then there are small groups for the actual processing and the therapy work, and then they come back into a larger group to do things that help to move the whole group along. But the small groups are kept to about approximately 6 people. And then the most we'll take is probably 3 groups. So the size of the total group is no more than probably 18.
But that really is very, very manageable, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So when you have, when you're doing a large lecture or you're doing something like a bonfire, so we take them through a process where they let go of old wounds and they use the bonfire as a ritual. So we have different ritual experiences that help move them along. We're very excited about that. We also have that for the men, for the Mother Enmeshed Men workshop as well. I don't know if you want to segue into that or hold off for the moment for that, but
no, let's go ahead and segue into that, because I think that is probably the workshop that most people would be most curious about. I mean, I know that a lot of my listeners don't necessarily even understand enmeshment in general. Can you explain what that is?
Sure. And I think that's a great question.
You use the word incest.
Well, let me start with enmeshment, which is a little more, a little more tolerable of a word. Back in the 80s, 70s or 80s for sure, the family therapist at the time began to notice that too much closeness between generations and families was linked to somatic disorders in children. And when they began to work with separating the grandparents from the parents and the parents from the children, they began to notice that the somatic symptoms of the children decreased. And what they began to postulate was that you can have too much closeness in a family system where the closeness becomes intrusive and engulfing and guilt-producing and burdensome. And it's the opposite of what we typically hear in dysfunctional families when we think about neglect and abuse. This is where the family appears very close, and in many ways are very close, but oftentimes some of these close systems, some of the closeness can be too much. And one of the particular pieces of that kind of system can be what we call a parent-child enmeshed relationship, in which the parent is over-involved with the child at the cost to the child's own identity, their own separateness, their own individuality, all the way from mothers being jealous of their sons' girlfriends and vice versa with fathers and their daughters. When I talk about the word covert incest, that's referring to the enmeshed relationship beginning to feel like it's a romantic relationship. Like, not only is my mother, if I would think about sons and mothers in this case, not only is my mother too engulfing and making me feel guilty all the time, but she's treating me like her boyfriend. Ick. That feels terrible to me. Icky. Even though there's no physical sexual touch, the relationship can feel very, very much violating sexually. In other words, I have to be loyal to my mother. My mother is my girlfriend rather than having a girlfriend, for example. So when we see that kind of, and sometimes that can occur very innocently, if you will. So anybody who's a parent knows that, and I'm a parent, and my wife's a parent, and we have a son, and I've seen this kind of unfold in our family. And any parent has a normal love affair with their child, right? It's a special kind of love, and it's very sweet. And this concept of enmeshment is not meant to degrade or criticize that kind of relationship. But when the parent uses the child to get their needs met, that's a problem. And what we see in men, so this workshop is particularly for men, because we see a lot of this issue with men and their mothers, particularly among the sex addict population, but not limited to that group. So this workshop is focused particularly on men because I think there's a lot of men who go untreated around this, and I wanted to create a workshop for them. So what happens when these boys, these men as boys, are playing the role of their mother's surrogate husband, listening to their complaints and their sexual frustrations about their father, and feeling as if they have to be angry with their dad on behalf of their mother, and they have to declare loyalty to their mom. And what occurs is that in adulthood, these men cannot commit. They can't be committed in a relationship, or they're overcommitted at a cost to their own lives. Most often, the set of symptoms and problems that we see with these men who played as boys the surrogate husband to their mothers is that they struggle to commit, they have sexual difficulties, they have a lot of guilt and anxiety, sometimes depression. They have tremendous problems around loyalty issues. In other words, they declare loyalty to the wrong people and have a difficult time setting boundaries and saying, no, I don't want to do that for you. They put their mothers before their wives and their girlfriends or their partners if they happen to be gay. Their loyalty is to their parent rather than to themselves or their partner or spouse. I got a letter today in the mail when I got into the office this morning. It was from a woman from Arizona. Her name was Danielle, and I won't say her last name, but she wrote to me and she said, you know, I read one of your books, When He's Married to Mom. So I have two books on this topic. One is When He's Married to Mom, and the other is Silently Seduced. And she said, you know, I blamed myself for the breakup of the relationship with my boyfriend, who I thought was the love of my life, but I could never compete with his mother. I read your book, and it was the first time that I felt understood by somebody who knew exactly what I was going through. This man would never commit to me, and I was always in competition with his mother. I lost him to his mother. I had many well-meaning friends who told me I should hang in there, and I did hang in there, but it's to no avail. His loyalty will always remain with his mother. And so I created this workshop so that these men can begin to identify that issue and begin to separate and unhook from their mothers so they're free to commit to a romantic relationship of their choice. And I'm very excited about it. It's the first time I've ever created a workshop in intensive. It's not, a workshop's the wrong word. A workshop implies almost like it's an educational format. I don't want to mislead your listeners. It's very much an intensive therapeutic process.
So then obviously the partners of these men realize that they can't compete and there's this unusual bond and mother comes first. And yet if you're a man, you may feel, I think the word you actually used was icky, you may feel like it's too close and you're never enough and you're like a surrogate parent or surrogate spouse, a companion, that kind of thing. And so are men able to talk about this? Because this would seem like almost taboo for a man to talk about this kind of relationship with his mother.
Well, you know, that's a good question. First of all, he's not likely to talk about it. And because, I mean, oftentimes these men are seen as weak or soft, and they've been ridiculed, good boys, but, you know, and so they're not likely to talk about that. And sometimes they're not likely to even be aware of it. They almost normalize it, right, that what I'm doing is normal. You don't understand, honey, that you know, this is my mother. You just have to be patient. And the poor spouse or partner is always feeling like she's in the back seat of the car, always the one witnessing the relationship. You know, oftentimes I have women or spouses or girlfriends or wives of these men who actually claim they feel like the other woman. They feel like the affair partner. Not surprising, these men can have affairs because they can be free in an affair, or if you will, an uncommitted relationship, because it's no threat to mother. They can be free with pornography. They can be free with prostitutes. But they often shut down sexually and emotionally with the primary partner because it feels so disloyal. So most of these men do not talk about it. Many of them aren't aware of it. They might be aware that they're angry and frustrated. They get tired of their mother calling all the time or asking them to change a light bulb on Saturday night. Can't you do it yourself? You know, or calling me up and talking to me about your fight with Dad. I don't want to be involved. They may be very well aware of feeling frustrated, but they wouldn't necessarily identify the relationship as dysfunctional or enmeshed or inappropriate or icky. They may have forgotten as a boy those moments that felt too close and too icky. They may have suppressed that, or more than suppressed, they may have disassociated it, removed themselves, put into another compartment those feelings, only to act them out with pornography or prostitutes or affair partners.
And explain that almost eroticized rage, if you will, that may be occurring because of that relationship with one's mother.
Yes, there's a lot of anger in these men, tremendous amount of anger, and the biggest source of anger is that they're always feeling obligated and guilty to the parent, and never quite feeling free. And one of the ways that they can act out their anger, let's say they get married, they find a way to force themselves to get married, only to begin to feel torn between the demands of the wife and the demands of the mother. And in their anger, they say, the heck with both of you, I'll go be free with Susie across town, or the prostitute, or the pornography. It's a sort of angry retaliation, an angry attempt to separate, and it's fusing anger and sex together. Very much that's the case. But of course, it doesn't work, right? They wind up creating more guilt and more disloyalty issues and more problems with feeling now I have to commit even more to somebody I may be ambivalent about, right? So there's a lot of ambivalence in these men. Ambivalence meaning that they're uncertain and unable to know where they stand on issues. They're ambivalent in their attachment styles, meaning that on one hand, I desperately need to be close to somebody, but when I get close to somebody, you feel like you're smothering me and I push away from you. So they're kind of back and forth, ambivalent. They can't make up their minds about dinner plans or which movie to go to sometimes. And that all comes from this loyalty to the parent at a cost to themselves, never getting a sense of who they really are. And yes, they're very angry about that. And one of the things we're going to work on the workshop is trying to reduce, or making direct attempts to reduce the anger so that it doesn't come out inappropriately at the spouse or partner or out sexually. So we're going to work really hard. Now, our workshops are not an addiction workshop. This workshop for mother enmeshed men is very specifically a workshop designed to get at the dynamic that is between mother and son. And this can be the case if mother has been dead for 10 years, because at that point, the damage has already been done. Certainly if she's still alive and there's still too much closeness and too much demands, it can continue to be problematic. But even when a parent is dead, sometimes the legacy continues. So the workshop is going to assist these men to identify what happened to them, what the consequences are, to de-stress or decompress some of the anger and other feelings, and then to make some commitments to themselves about where they want their life to go, and to be able to make a commitment to somebody in a romantic relationship based on their choosing. And so that's going to be... Yeah, I would think that...
Oh, excuse me. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's going to be the focus of our workshop. I'm very excited about that. And the value that these men are going to have in doing this is they're going to be able to come together and hear other men say the same story.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. I can't think of any other treatment center, any type of intensive out there that would provide this kind of work for men that have grown up like this. So this sounds like such a novel, intensive workshop for men that may not have any other opportunity to be with experts who know how to get to the root of the problem, kind of jumpstart the progress, create a safe place for them to feel this. That's what I think is so phenomenal, that there just isn't a safe place to talk about this, to feel the feelings, and, to deal with the core issues. So this is so therapeutic. Now, again, for anybody who's listening, who's interested in this, that workshop is on March 20th through the 23rd. It's going to be at in Clarkston, Michigan, and you said it's the Columbia Beer Conference Retreat Center?
It's the Columbia Retreat Center. So they don't need to worry about that because they would come to us and we would give them the information about Columbia Air. But it is held at the Columbia Retreat Center, run by us.
And the office number to contact you about that is 248-398-0740. And if they needed to go to a website, what website would they be able to look at this intensive workshop?
Yes, they would go to www.sexualhealth-addiction.com. It's all one word, sexualhealth-addiction.com, or they can go to Dr. Ken Adams, drkenadams.com. It'll get them both into the same website and go into workshops, and they can get our phone number. And we do a phone screening for both the Mother Enmeshed Men workshop, and we do a phone screening for the Partners workshop. And we have, just so you know, and we try to include everybody, but when we feel like there's not a good fit, then we invite them to do some therapy on their own and come back and see us again. So we're very careful about the fit. So we make this a very positive and effective experience for everybody there.
Well, and space is still available in both workshops, and so really they need to contact you. They're then assessed via the phone, and if appropriate, they can still get into the workshop. If it's not quite appropriate yet, you refer them to a CSAT or somebody in their area that can actually get them to a place where they can then attend the workshop at a later date.
That's correct. And there's a 10% discount available for the Partners workshop. We've hit that cutoff in the Mother Enmeshed one, but there's still some room in the Partners. So the early sign-ups get the 10% discount. And the price includes everything, including the therapy, the lodging, and the food.
And again, you said it starts on Thursday evening and goes all the way to Sunday.
Through Sunday, half a day, yes. So that way they have time to get back on a plane and head back home. So we tried, and it's fairly intensive. So on Saturday and Sunday, they're working from 8:30 in the morning to 8:30 at night. So there's a lot of therapy that goes on. There's downtime. There's homework at night. There's special assignments. So the whole process is laid out in a very specific way. We're also going to be offering workshops for male sex addicts, female sex and love addicts, and couples in recovery as well. So couples recovering from sexual addiction as well as couples recovering from mother enmeshment issues. I can't tell you the number of wives and girlfriends who have asked me, can you see us as a couple? So we're going to offer later in the year some more intensive workshops designed by my associates and I.
So they really do need to get to your website so that they can get on your mailing list and find out what is available. And, of course, I'm sure people come from all over the world. It's especially nice if you live in the Midwest and don't have to drive as far. But, truly, you have people that come from anywhere to these workshops.
We do, yes. I get calls for assessments from all over the world around this, particularly around the enmeshment issue. As you noted earlier in the show, there's not a lot of specific work being done around that. It's sometimes embedded in other more general recovery work. But the workshop we designed here, it, to my knowledge, is the only specific workshop for that issue that's out there.
And again, Dr. Adams, if someone is not sure they're quite ready for this yet, they can read your book, and the title of your book again is?
Silently Seduced, When Parents Make Their Children Partners. And I've also written a book called When He's Married to Mom, How to Help Mother Enmeshed Men Open Their Hearts to True Love and Commitment. So Silently Seduced is for men and women because they're both on the enmeshment issue. The When He's Married to Mom is more specific to men in that problem. men with that problem, although it's also written for the spouses of those men. Silently Seduced is written for both men and women, because women also get into struggles with their mothers, with enmeshment. The course is a little different, although the symptoms are very similar. We see some women who have been their surrogate wives to their fathers. Although we see more women who are meshed with their mothers and wind up absorbing some of their mother's anger at men and find it difficult to make commitments to men or relationships because of the enmeshed relationship with their mothers and absorbing her reality, never having a chance to get her own identity. So we do see that enmeshment issue with women. It's just that my workshop isn't for women this time around, but my book, Silently Seduced, is.
Well, and I want to just ask you a few questions as we begin to wrap up. You've obviously got two very specialized niches for people that are suffering from enmeshment or partners that are suffering with their own sense of identity because they've been so wrapped up and traumatized by being with a sex addict. But do you think it's truly possible to recover from a sex addiction?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We see people do it all the time. But keep in mind, there's this notion that somebody becomes recovered, right? It doesn't quite work that way. What recovering people learn is that they're like everybody else at some point when they begin to feel on an equal playing field, is that they have to continue to manage feelings, deal with issues of trust, learn to contend with conflict, negative beliefs, urges. So addiction recovery requires an ongoing commitment to a life process that keeps being conscious and learning to live in reality rather than trying to escape it as their priority. So we see people all the time who make that commitment, who stay out of relapse because they're living a life that is a recovering life. We see that with people who are enmeshed. I get asked that around enmeshed men. Do you think it's actually possible for my husband or my boyfriend to break free and be committed to me? I say yes, but he can't do it if he remains committed to his mother. I get
he's
asked
like the
that.
Drug, only he doesn't mean
right.
to
Oh,
use
absolutely. Absolutely. So, the caveat is yes, he can recover, but he's going to have to get his priorities straight. And I get asked that with partners of sex addicts. Am I ever going to be able to trust him again if it's a woman with a man? Well, that's a tough question. You can trust yourself again, and you may or may not be able to trust him again, but you can certainly come to trust yourself and learn to sort out other relationships in the world, and then there's ways you can determine whether your hopefully recovering addict can be trusted again. So I think recovery is possible. People do it all the time. Absolutely.
And yet, as you indicated, it is a growing process, and addicts are constantly faced with situations that can re-trigger them to some degree, and they have to use those skills over and over and over again and grow stronger from them.
Absolutely.
So do you think most people do stay together when faced with the sex addiction in their relationship? What's your experience there?
Well, it's hard. My experience is what I see in the clinic. So I have a skewed population, of course. But of the people that we come into our practice, when the addict makes a earnest effort to recover because he knows he needs to, as opposed to image managing for his marriage, we see a strong base of possibility. If he can empathize with the impact on the partner, and then as a couple, if they can grieve the fact that their marriage has been impacted by the sex addiction and come to terms with the fact that on one level, what their relationship used to be is no longer, and they will always have to contend with some level of pain or grief, and then make a new commitment. We see more and more couples doing that. But it's a very difficult process, but by all means possible. Absolutely. If they're willing to do the work, and if there's a base of love and respect that can be either rebuilt or further developed. Absolutely.
Well, and I know in your Spouses and Partners of Sex Addicts Intensive Workshop, you talk about that the partner really has to do some grief counseling and move towards empowerment from the grief, because if they stay victimized, they stay stuck. And once they grieve the grief and feel empowered from it, they can move forward.
That is one of the biggest issues, is because that's one of the primary focus of our intensive, is to help them do some grieving. And I think grieving is an ongoing process, but you know, there's sometimes a repetitive refrain with partners, you know, because they're in shock and so forth. But one is, why did you do that, right? I can't believe you did that. And sometimes that's the shock stage. Other times, when it's occurring over the course of 2 years after the betrayal's been exposed and the addiction's been exposed, sometimes it's the difficulty with grieving that, oh my God, the marriage that I had or the relationship that I had is just not what it was, right? And my power comes from facing that reality, grieving it, and making some new decisions for myself. So we gently support grieving. We don't make any decisions for partners. We don't have any agenda for partners to do anything that at all. This is really their process, and we want to make sure people are clear about that. You know, sometimes therapists will try to decide for the partner, oh, you shouldn't be married to him, or you should stay with him because of your religious values. We don't take any position about that. Our position is to help the partner grieve her losses, reclaim her reality, so she's better able to make decisions for herself.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I know that with an intensive, there may be some people that say, gosh, I don't know if I can really put out the money for that right now. You know, because in some ways it may be the price of 10 sessions with your therapist. But I've seen the work that people have done in intensive, and it's like tenfold the amount of benefit and help that they get from doing intensive work on themselves. So for anybody out there that worries about the money issue, these are very affordable workshops, and you will benefit tenfold by them. I mean, you've done a masterful job of putting these together. Your books are incredible, and I personally have gotten to be a part of Dr. Adams' teachings. He helped me with my CSAT certification and taught modules. And, you know, he's one of the finest teachers in the nation on this subject. So it's kind of what I say about Patrick Carnes. You know, you're doing yourself a disservice if you wait. Get out there and at least see if it's the right thing for you. So,
well, thank you, Carol, for that vote of confidence.
Testimonial.
Yeah, so it's very good. I appreciate it.
Well, you are. You're very good, very compassionate, very thorough, and there's an intellectual side to you where, you know, you said it's not about education, but it really is. When, you know, I've talked to people who have worked with you, and they say not only do they feel different internally, they understand the changes that have occurred inside of them. So, you know, I can't speak highly enough about any of the trainings that you put together, you know, whether you're training them specifically, or I'm sure that your colleagues are amazing as well. You said compassionate and heartfelt and all sorts of things. So let's go over
great.
one more time before we end. Now, the intensive workshop for Mother Enmeshed Men's is March 20th through the 23rd, and it is in Clarkston, Michigan. And to get a hold of you, they can either call your office at 248-398-0740, or they can contact you via the website, drdrkenadams.com, or that second website again is
sexualhealth-addiction.com, all one word, sexualhealth-addiction.com. addiction, not underscore, but -addiction.com. And the Partners Workshop is also in March. I don't have the date in front of me.
It is March 13th through the 16th.
That's right. The week before, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, same place and same experience, but for a whole different population. And, again, if you're interested, you have to call the office and be assessed. They're not going to put you in that workshop if you're not ready to do the work, or if you need to do some additional work before you can get there. So, Dr. Adams, thank you so much.
And also, if they're feeling a little, thank you. And if they're feeling a little scared, we'll help. We'll be happy to hold hands, get them through the door as well. Thanks for having me.
Well, the power of groups. Oh, you're welcome, and good luck to you, and good luck for the workshops. I look forward to seeing you at the symposium this year. Yeah,
great. Let's be sure to say hi. Okay. Take care.
All right. You too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. No, I really can't say enough good things about him. He's amazing. He's compassionate, and he just knows his stuff. And so if you felt like this intensive sounded like it would help you, I can only say that you're dealing with one of the masters in the field. And that's why I really hope that you will consider it. You're worth it. And, again, I don't want to push into something that you may not be ready for, but they'll help you to determine that. And as he indicated, they'll hold your hand if they decide you're ready for it and you're still kind of nervous about it. I get that. You know, when I run groups, almost every single man in my group says, I didn't want to be in this group. I was scared to death to be in this group. I'm really shocked I'm here. And within the third session, they're typically saying, this is the best thing that ever happened to me. So it's kind of one of those face your fears head on and let go and let God. All right, another great show. I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, you can email me at carolthecoach@aol.com. As I say at the end of every show, you know, there will only be one of you at all times, so fearlessly have the courage to face your fears head on and to be yourself and create that life you deserve. So I will look forward to seeing you next Monday. And just remember, there is hope and help out there for you, but you can't do it alone. That's my promise to you. You can't white-knuckle it and do it alone. So keep listening to the show. Get yourself with a certified sexual addictions therapist, and be open to all the changes that occur when you work on yourself. Have a great week, and for most of you out there in the United States, stay warm, and we'll talk to you soon.